Alright, so I'm from Texas, and to be honest, we don't really think about global warming that much. It's always hot in Texas, so if it gets hotter, what's the difference? However, reality is quite different from what we think it is. Global warming can be seen in many forms, two of which are droughts and floods. Now, in my hometown of Wichita Falls, a city in North Texas on the Oklahoma border, we've experienced a 5-year drought, and then 3 years of floods after that. So a lot has gone on in the past decade, which is uncharacteristic to the area. From 2010 to 2015, the United States Drought Monitor had us under D4 Stage 5 exceptional drought conditions. There were signs on every post and in every yard saying, "Pray for rain." However, in a course of 2 weeks, the DM moved us to no drought at all. How? We had a flood. After 5 years of harsh drought, forcing us to find new water resources, we had a flood that eliminated that all in the span of 2 weeks. Not only did this happen in 2015, but also in 2016 and in 2017. We went from drought conditions to flood conditions. These extremes were caused by global warming. While we don't have melting glaciers in Texas, we too experience the effects of global warming. All these extreme conditions, be they on one end of the spectrum or the other, cause disturbance in the lives of locals. Whether it's the dying of crops, the raising of gas prices, or the flooding of homes, global warming means bad news, even for Texas residents.
In the coming decades, Georgia, located in the southeast region of America, will become warmer while experiencing more intense weather conditions. Because of global warming, there's a higher chance for severe flood and drought in Georgia's near future, and even today, they are experiencing more intense rainfall and heavy downpours. This change in weather patterns is beginning to affect the #1 industry in Georgia, agriculture. Jonathan Seche, a former farmer from A&J Farms in Winston, Georgia, says, "We have had 3 snowfalls this past winter. I lived in Georgia most of my whole life, and I don't ever recall having that many. The one we had in January stayed out here on the fields for 3 weeks. So while this may seem to indicate the opposite of global warming, these strange weather occurrences are actually symptoms of overall climate change. And the weird weather will not stop there. Over time, with severe floods, droughts, and unexpected dry and wet spells, Georgia as a whole will change. Agriculturally, farmers will be able to grow crops which require warmer climates than Georgia has now, such as oranges and olives. Drier overall conditions will cause stress on the livestock, and the flash flooding could lead to soil erosion and runoff, which will change the forests of Georgia as well. With the rising annual temperatures also comes damages for human life, with higher chances of heat stroke and heat-related illnesses."
California is a large state. Too large, some may say, but that's neither here nor there. Since it is so large, a variety of climate change indicators show themselves as regional effects of global warming. Since California has become so dry recently, I'll focus on the effects of drought and wildfires. California's overall temperature has increased by 3 degrees Fahrenheit in the last 100 years. The most pertinent manifestations of climate change that affect California are wildfires and drought. Drought conditions and wildfires harm agriculture, a massive Californian industry. Agriculture covers roughly a quarter of California's land mass, or 27.6 million acres. Certain crops, like wine in the Napa Valley, need several months of cool weather between 32 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit to bloom properly. That weather may move further north as a result of climate change, shifting the wine industry into the northwest. This is similar to wine weather moving into England, where fine wines were previously unheard of. Fire also impacts humans. In this round of wildfires alone, 43 people have died, and fire has inflicted approximately $3 billion worth of damages. This does not account for the harmful chemicals and aerosols produced by the destruction of homes and the health costs people will eventually have to pay. Increasing temperatures and dry conditions, as well as wildfires, will change California's landscape drastically. Deserts will expand in the Sonora, Mojave, and Great Basin regions of California, changing the agricultural production environment as we know it.
Since the 1950s, climate change has been evident in Wyoming through the decrease in snowpack. As average winter temperatures fall, tree lines over the mountain ranges have a longer growing season and start to grow at higher elevations. A higher tree line would change the alpine tundra ecosystem, threatening certain species. Additionally, as temperatures rise, the 1,500 glaciers contained in the mountains of Wyoming will begin to melt and disappear entirely. This will keep snow from lasting all winter long in the future, and could hurt the state of Wyoming economically in terms of tourism and take away from the water supply. While there is typically a negative feedback loop associated with increased precipitation caused by climate change, this does not prove helpful for Wyoming. Increased evaporation removes moisture from the soil of crops, and while rainfall is expected to increase, it is not enough to compensate for the lost water. Drought conditions are expected to rise and persist, leaving forests with less defense against pests. Additionally, drought leads to a longer wildfire season, which devastates the plants and vegetations of Wyoming. On average, about 1.4% of the land in the state has burned per decade since 1984.
Farmers are very, and ranchers are very adaptable, and they will stay on top of changes on the ground as they see them. And what we see in many parts of Colorado is that farmers are using more heat and drought tolerant varieties. We would expect those trends to continue over the next several decades, because we'll have this warming climate that will create more drought stress, and even in a normal precipitation year, your crops will have higher water use. A warmer atmosphere is a thirstier atmosphere, and so it'll want to pull more water out of your plants, including your crops. So maybe balancing that, the growing season is getting longer. The time between your last frost in the spring and your first frost in the fall. And maybe for some crops you could get in a second or third hay crop, say, where you only had one or two before, but you have to make sure you've got the water to support that growth. The warm temperatures and longer season won't help you if you can't keep your crops moist. Colorado will remain towards the top of the warming states into the future, and in general, land warms faster than the oceans. The oceans have high thermal inertia. They tend to want to stay where they are. The land surface is going to respond faster than the oceans. And by extension, the inland areas well away from the oceans, and we're about as far as you can get from an ocean here in Colorado, are going to warm faster than the coastal areas because we're further from that moderating influence. At arid locations are expected to warm faster than more humid locations. So there's less water vapor in the air at all times. And so snowpack is decreasing in most locations across the West. It's likely that there will be decreases in midwinter snowpack. It's more likely there will be decreases in early and late season. And so we'll really see our snow season shrinking on both ends. 80% of our runoff comes between April and July. So overall water availability is likely to be impacted. The warming will tend to take sort of more off the top. More of what falls as snow and rain will tend to go back up into the atmosphere in warmer climates. And so that reduced water availability will impact all sectors. That's been noted throughout the West that the wildfire season has extended on both ends, and on the near end and on the far end, both in the spring and the fall, it has quite a bit to do with snow. So I've already said we expect more wildfire in the future, more area burned, and so that means more smoke. In our valleys and here along the Front Range, we experienced some very smoky days this summer from fires that were a few to several states away. Smoke can be deadly to folks who already have respiratory impairments, and generally to infants and to older folks. Also, warmer temperatures tend to increase ozone production. Ground level ozone is a respiratory irritant, and it's something that the cities have to monitor and watch for exceedances to maintain good air quality. And then I think heat waves will become a public health hazard in the Denver metro area, and maybe also in Colorado Springs and urbanizing areas on the West Slope too, in a way that they haven't been in the 20th century.